You aren't recording yet, right?
Man, I wish I was recording right before I was recording, folks, because we've got a lot to talk about on this episode. We're talking women's basketball transfer portal, men's basketball transfer portal, baseball. I got a question about how these rankings work every single week, and then maybe we'll get into a little Sports Illustrated swimsuit talk for a very specific reason. But let's jump into this episode right now. Hey, Frog fans. Welcome into another episode of Frogs Insider presented by the Flying T Club. Jamie Plunkett here alongside Melissa Treebwasser as always. And Melissa was glad that we weren't recording right before we started recording. For what reason was it again?
Listen, as a straight woman, I could still appreciate a beautiful woman. And you told me right before we hit record about potentially a certain TCU basketball player who may have been in the preview for the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue. And no matter which way you lean romantically, that ad is going to get your attention. And as you said, it certainly got the board over at Horny Frog Blitz.
Oh, God. Yeah. The board got a hold of it today. Listen, shout out to Haley Van Lith. It does appear like she's going to be in the Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition this upcoming issue or whatever. I don't even know how that works, to be completely honest with you.
Sure, Jamie. Sure, we've all heard that before.
Listen, did I used to be locked in on Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue? Absolutely. Have I gotten away from that practice in the last 15 to 20 years? Also, yes. So
I honestly didn't even know there was still a swimsuit issue, but hey, you know what?
Okay, let's not go that far.
Hey, it's not my thing. Listen, hell yeah, Haley. Like,
great branding opportunity for TCU, right?
I don't think TCU needed help in that branding department, frankly. Let's just say when I arrived on campus, I immediately went like, one of these things is not like the other. And that thing was me, compared to all the other beautiful women at TCU. But you know what? We had a great time. We live, we learn. Super pumped for Haley if it is indeed her. What an awesome opportunity. And I just could not be just more happy for her finding happiness and joy and doing whatever the hell she wants. And that's freaking awesome.
Yeah, it's just, I think, an extension of the mental strength and the mental health that she has kind of revitalized in her year at TCU, which is awesome to see. And we're knocking on the door of the WNBA draft. So
yeah. Week from today.
In hoops
recording
talk,
on Monday. Yeah.
In hoops talk, I think that we might have more to talk about this time next week as far as pro frogs in the WNBA, which is going to be so dope to talk about. But before we get into the rest of the show, Melissa, we do need to shout out our sponsors. The Flying T Club is TCU's NIL collective. They are the only NIL collective for TCU, supporting over 130 TCU athletes and partnering them with nonprofit organizations in and around the city of Fort Worth. FlyingTClub.com is where you can go to learn all of the information about what the organization does, the student athletes that it sponsors, and how you can get involved. FlyingTClub.com. You can make a one-time gift. You can set up a recurring gift. You can make a corporate partnership agreement with them. Go to FlyingTClub.com and see how you can get involved to support TCU student athletes today. Big shout out as well to Dave Campbell's Texas Football. We are a part of the Republic of Football Network over there. You can find our show as a part of that feed by searching Republic of Football Network wherever you get your podcasts, and you'll see our show pop up along with the show for every other D1 football program in the state of Texas, all in one nice feed for easy access. You can learn about us. You can listen to Tech. You can listen to Baylor, UTEP, UTSA, Houston, Texas, Texas A&M. Every single D1 football program in the state of Texas has a show on the Republic of Football Network.
Probably none of them are talking about the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue this week, though. But then again, I mean, what do we know? I do listen to them, but not non-football season as often. So
it's fine.
It's fine.
We're doing great. Republic of Football Network is where you can go for all of that. And if you just want the Frogs Insider content, you can get just the Frogs Insider content, as Bauer loves the Frogs Insider content, by searching Frogs Insider wherever you get your podcasts. Our feed will pop up. We have shows on that feed that don't always make it to the Republic of Football Network feed because sometimes we do multiple shows in a week. So say that you only listen to the Republic of Football Network feed. You might have missed Melissa's dope-ass previews with Mike Golick Jr. and Jessica Smetana before the TCU and Notre Dame game. You might have missed my interview with Chauncey Franks of TCU FCA talking about the work that he did from a leadership training perspective with TCU women's basketball this whole year. So get over there to Frogs Insider's podcast feed and the YouTube channel. Make sure you're subscribed, and you won't miss a thing. Melissa.
Jamie.
TCU women's basketball is losing quite a bit of production because Haley Van Lith, draft bound. Sedona Prince, draft bound. Madison Connor, maybe draft bound. Agnes Eminopu, graduated. Deasia Merrill, graduated.
Oh, so sad.
Bummer. Kenesha Godfrey, portal. Deasia Turner, portal. Maybe one or two other portals out there as well. They got a lot of bodies to replace off of this team that made it to the Elite Eight. And I noticed someone did a way too early preseason top 25.
Cream.
Mr. Cream.
My biggest op.
Mr. Cream himself did not have TCU in the top 25. And I'm going to back him up for 2 seconds.
Okay.
I'm going to play devil's advocate here. Or I'm just going to play Charlie Cream for 1 second.
Are you calling Charlie Cream the devil?
No.
Okay.
Devil's advocate.
Just friend of the devil.
Yes. Yeah. Proponent for, purveyor of similar thoughts and theories. If I look at what TCU's roster going into next season currently is, I have no reason to rank them in the top 25.
Sure.
Because the top 25 next year is not a, hey, they were really good last year poll for a team like TCU that has no history of being a top 25 team in women's basketball. Now, there are some blue bloods that will always get a little bit of favoritism, right? We're probably going to see South Carolina and UCLA and USC and UConn in the top 5, top 6 next year. Texas will probably be in the top 5 or top 6 next year, regardless of what their roster looks like in a month or two. That's fine. TCU doesn't get the benefit of the doubt like that. TCU used to get the benefit of the doubt like that in football, not in recent years, but they did. There were a couple years there, I'm thinking 2018, 2019, where TCU was preseason top 25 and not postseason top 25, right? So sometimes these things, your reputation precedes you. TCU doesn't really have a reputation to precede them, in spite of the fact that they went to an Elite Eight. So from that sense, I get why TCU wouldn't be in a preseason way too early top 25. Now, give it 3 weeks. When we see who TCU's pulled out of the transfer portal, and we're going to talk about a couple of those names here in a second, I think if you did a revised preseason top 25, TCU might be in there.
Yeah, and I think that is fair because it really is. I mean, you're not, like you said, you're not building off of a foundation of proven success. Like, it's a little funny to say that TCU doesn't belong in the top 25, but Notre Dame does, and they have basically one player on their roster. Of course, that player is Hannah Hidalgo, who's a finalist for the Naismith Player of the Year award, but also all of her teammates left her. So maybe there's things about Hannah Hidalgo that we need not celebrate. But I think you have to wait for that centerpiece to arrive before you can consider TCU a top 25 team. And I do like that it kind of puts a chip on Mark Campbell's shoulders in the offseason after the most successful season in school history. If you look at who is on the roster now, there is not a proven star, right? Like, I think that,
Maddie Sure, if she's healthy, can be a prolific scorer, but you're asking a lot. Yeah,
and she hasn't, even if she's healthy, she has a year plus of rust to knock off, right? So you don't know what to expect from her early on. I really like the pieces of Aaliyah Roberson and Taylor Bigby if they do indeed come back. But, they have a lot to prove. Donovan Hunter, I think we saw glimpses of her looking like she could be great, especially if you pair her next to a Haley Van Lith type scorer. You're not going to replace Haley, but some of the names that we're hearing in the portal, some of the people that have expressed interest in TCU certainly can add some punch on the offensive and defensive ends. You have a nice core to build around. Claire Silva signed out of the portal. She's going to be a really nice piece. But there are more questions than answers right now. Like you said, in a couple of weeks, we're going to have some of those answers. And if Mark Campbell is as prolific as he was a year ago in the portal, or 90% as prolific, then TCU is absolutely a top 25 team when the preseason rolls around. And that's the only thing that doesn't even matter. Nothing really matters until really December. So It's good to be mad about it. I love that poll like rankled TCU fans on the internet, and it was women's basketball. Like that to me is the nicest thing Charlie Cream could have done is gotten TCU fans caring about women's basketball in middle of April. But I'm not deeply offended by it. It's just, but I also like Charlie Cream has been a bad faith actor when it comes to TCU pretty much all season long. So I'm not surprised whatsoever. He's gonna wait and see on TCU, and frankly, that's fair.
That is fair. So let's talk some names really quickly because, like you said, Clara Silva already in the fold, a 6'7" center from Kentucky. She was a true freshman last year. Played pretty well. Let me pull up my little piece here on her. Just over 12 minutes a game, averaged 4 points and 2.6 rebounds, but is that kind of rangy, big post player who can start to give you a little bit of post presence in the post Sedona Prince era at TCU, because you're going to need someone to kind of lock it down in there, and she's going to be a body that has the ability to do that. But beyond her, there's a really big name, probably the biggest name in the transfer portal this cycle, who has been linked to TCU. I heard about this. I think there are a couple other folks who have been tweeting about it as well. Notre Dame guard Olivia Miles, who TCU obviously saw a couple of times this year, held her to just 3 of 10 shooting in the Sweet 16 game. But Miles is a prolific scorer. She averaged over 15 points a game, 5.6 rebounds on 48% shooting from the floor. She shot 40% from three-point range this year, 5'10 guard, so she's similar build to Haley. Really good handles, really good on-ball skills. Kind of fits the mold of what Mark Campbell wants in a point/combo guard as far as being able to ball handle, distribute, and come off of screens. She's foregoing the WNBA draft,
where she would have been a top 3 pick and likely number 2.
Projected number 2 overall pick to come back to college, which raises some questions, right? Why? Obviously, there's a salary limit in the WNBA that doesn't quite exist in college athletics yet. I believe what's the incoming salary is like around
$76,535.
My understanding is that whoever ends up with Olivia Miles probably going to get a little bit more than that.
Yeah, I would imagine so.
Right? And so financially, it makes a lot of sense for her to use this little bit of leverage that she's got, because in a year from now, probably still going to be a pretty high draft pick in the WNBA and go on to have a pretty fun career there. So go get your bag, right? No problem with that. And if it ends up being TCU, I think that's great, because that gives you kind of the next person to build a team around. Because the question is, and this is a question that I have for coaches who have built winners in the past, there is such a big difference between having a great team and having a great program.
Yeah.
And Olivia Miles has the talent and the ability to kind of shift TCU from, hey, they had a really great team, to Mark Campbell is building a great program. And I think that getting Olivia Miles in would be huge for that kind of progress. And it would also be huge for things like Charlie Cream not including TCU in the way too early top 25. Because then you've said, hey, we didn't just, stumble into getting Haley Van Lith and Sedona Prince on campus. We are building something that is attractive to the top players in college basketball year over year over year, and Olivia Miles is just the next person to come join that.
Well, and you're still in a position because of where the program was just a couple of years ago, where you need another Band-Aid. And you eventually, like you see Clara Silva come in and she's got multiple years of eligibility. Some of the other names on the list have multiple years of eligibility, but you still need those experienced stars, those proven veterans to come in and kind of carry you until you can start signing the elite high school talent. Because I think, much like we've seen in football, that's going to be the way to build a successful program in women's basketball. You can get those stars through the portal, but you also need to build a foundation of young people that you're developing too. And I think that's ultimately Mark Campbell's plan and what he intends to do, but he still has to prove himself a little bit more in order to get those super elite top 25, top 50 high school players to give TCU a chance. Now, he was in late on some of those superstars.
Chavez,
and made from everything I heard in Birmingham, made a late push and a pretty attractive appeal before she ultimately chose Oklahoma. But I think that getting a Miles, like you said, if you can have a Haley, and again, like, cannot speak, and we'll have to do this episode later too, of like single season impacts by a TCU athlete, like Haley has got to be up there, because not only did she play incredible, but the way she spoke about Coach Campbell, her teammates, the culture, being at TCU is a reason why Olivia Miles is looking and saying, I could see myself there. Because you talked about being truly loved and cared for as a coaching staff, being in a place where you were safe to be your authentic self. Like she said at the post-game podium in Birmingham, like, Coach Campbell thanked me for coming here, but I thank him every day for taking a chance on me. And when you have a superstar like that saying those types of things, she opened the door for people to see. She put TCU on a national stage where not only could people see this university that is developing support for the sport, that's developing financial support for the sport, but also where you can thrive in a system that makes good guards great and great guards elite. I mean, Haley after last year was likely not going to get drafted at all. Like probably not a second round, third round pick. Now she's going to likely be at the very end of the first round or the beginning of the second at worst. And that's because Mark Campbell lets his superstars look like superstars. And Olivia Miles would absolutely thrive in this pick and roll system that he runs, and could help get TCU to that next stage of being able to get those stars when they're sophomores and juniors, not just when they're seniors and fifth year players.
Absolutely. Continuing on down the list, I put an article on Horned Frog Blitz about this time last week with some names that I had heard were connected to TCU in the transfer portal. One of those, Kate Koval, has since committed to LSU, the forward
Pray
from
for you,
Notre
Kate.
Dame. So best of luck there. Kylie Watson is another Notre Dame player, though, who I've heard is connected to TCU, a forward who missed this season with a torn ACL. But she appeared in 31 games last season, averaged 6 points and 5 rebounds in just over 25 minutes a game. Spent 2 years at Notre Dame. Prior to that, spent 2 years at Oregon, where she was one of 5 five-star recruits who signed for that class. Another member of that recruiting class, Maddie Scher, and the lead recruiter for that recruiting class, Mark Campbell. So there's the connection there with Kylie Watson, a very talented, could fill that kind of Agnes Eminopu role of being that bigger four.
But do it at 6'4" and
But
not
do it at 6'4"
Yeah.
instead of 6'1", right? And so you have a little bit more size inside. You pair that with the Clara Silva, or when you want to go a little smaller, you can move Kylie to the 5. That would be an option there if Kylie ends up signing with TCU. Another player on the list as well is guard. She was a true freshman guard at USC this year, Avery Howell. She has now. This is this is something to track, because my understanding when she hit the portal was that it was like 2 teams, right? It was TCU and Washington, and rightfully so for Avery Howell. Her recruitment in the portal has blown up a little bit. Iowa's gotten involved. UCLA is getting involved. I think Washington is still heavily involved as well. She was a McDonald's All-American in 2024. She was 2-time Gatorade Player of the Year in Idaho. She averaged, 8.5 points and 3 rebounds per game this season. She shot 43.5% from three-point range. So she is an absolute sniper. She could fit that Madison Connor role at TCU. But there's a lot of competition for Avery Howell right now in the portal.
And she's a player, too, that when Juju Watkins got hurt, really stepped up. I think she had 18 points in the win over Kansas State. Can absolutely fill it up on multiple levels. And that's the kind of player that is really going to differentiate this portal class. Like you said, there's a ton of competition because she still has 3 years, or potentially 4, depending on what happens with the 5 to play 5 rule, to play basketball. And she's a player that you can develop and build upon. And if you have, her as a sophomore, Dono is a junior, Claire is you have a chance to build not just for next year, but to build that program. And that's the kind of talent that's going to continue to draw elite talent in. So that's definitely the one that I am hoping and praying for. Flying T Club members, maybe this is the time just to, maybe a little. Listen. I know things are tough out there. We've all seen the markets, but if you can spare a penny or two, I would love to see her in purple. I feel like she has a chance in that system, especially to be super elite.
She does, and her teammate Kaylee Heckel is also in the transfer portal now, a 5'9" guard who is also a true freshman this year. She was also a 2024 McDonald's All-American, and she won a gold medal with Team USA's under 18 at the 2024 FIBA AmeriCup. So very talented point guard. In a reserve role this year, averaged a little over 5 points and 2 assists per game, around 16 minutes a game. She's another player that TCU has been connected with in the transfer portal, which kind of to the same point, Melissa. You say you get Olivia Miles in here for 1 year. You're trying to pass the baton to somebody. You've obviously got Donovan Hunter. Having a player like Kaylee Heckel as well gives you a really nice 1-2 punch to that point guard 1-2 spot to build around from a foundational perspective. So Heckel's another name as well. And then there's also another name from another post player, Cal big Marta Suarez is making her decision soon between TCU, Ohio State, Notre Dame, and North Carolina. She's 6'3". She's a graduate transfer, so another 1 year kind of veteran player. She averaged 13 points and 7.5 rebounds per game at Cal this year. So another player who's got some size. Mark Campbell is really stressing getting bigger in the front court, and Marta fits that mold.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I have all faith, no matter what happens here over the next couple of weeks, that Mark Campbell is going to identify and bring in the right types of players for his system and his culture. And like he said multiple times here in the postseason, is that he knows things are changing because he's getting calls, he's not making calls. And so he has the luxury of evaluating what's right for TCU and what's right for his team. And I think you've mentioned this, and I know he's mentioned it at press conferences, but they will look at every single player in the portal. Their staff has been, I'm sure, grinding away on film. And so there will be no stone unturned. And we saw, Madison Connor was not a kid that a lot of people saw being the type of player she finished her career as. Agnes Eminopu really blossomed and developed. Donovan Hunter was a starter on an Elite 18, but we saw parts of her game unlocked in this system. So the proof is in the pudding for TCU women's basketball. I think there's no doubt that even if you miss out on a couple of those names that you mentioned, there will be others clamoring to be a part of what Mark Campbell is building. And when you look at where the Sweet 16 is located in 2026, it is in Fort Worth, Texas, and Sacramento, California, places that are meaningful to myself and to Mark Campbell. So I think that they will be doing everything to make a very hard push to end up being a part of that again. And it's easy for us that are around him. So I miss this team, man. It's been a week, and I am genuinely sad that I don't know the next time I'm going to get to talk to these players or these coaches. I will, I'm not worried, but I think when we're around the program and as part of the program as we've both been, it's really easy to see that this is about way more than an elite talent like a Haley Van Lith, a Sedona Prince. This is about a culture that's truly, truly special and a coaching staff that really gets it. So the national voices might not see it. I think we got some to buy in. I think Katie Barnes over at ESPN, who spent time in Fort Worth and Birmingham around TCU, I think she is fully bought in to what this program can be. But that will come in time because they're going to do it the right way.
They absolutely are. Melissa, let's shift over to the men's side of things for a little bit because TCU got its second transfer portal commit over the weekend in guard Jaden Pierre. He's from Providence. He averaged 12.3 points, 3.2 assists, and 2.8 rebounds per game as a junior at Providence this year. Not a great Providence team. He did pretty well, though. He shot 34% from three-point range as well. And this is a really nice addition to the squad. I like this addition specifically when we're talking about getting Pierre in the context of also having Brock Harding. Yeah. Because one of the challenges that Jaden Pierre kind of comes with is the turnovers. If you put the ball in his hands too much, expect him to be the primary point guard. Turnovers can accumulate a little bit. That was a problem for TCU this year. It's a problem for TCU the last couple years at point guard since Mike Miles and Damian Ball left the program. But he's a guy who, when you can ask him to be more of a secondary guard, more of an off-ball guard, that true combo guard, tends to have a lot of success. And so you've got Brock Harding, the Iowa transfer, who is a true point guard, an excellent creator. He was fourth in the Big Ten in assists last year. And now you've got a scorer next to him. You're starting to see TCU's backcourt come together a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think the efficiency, that Brock Harding will give you, like you said, leading that, it opens up things for Pierre. I think like the comp is like what we hoped Vashon Alette would have the opportunity to be before Frankie Collins got hurt, right? Like I think he can play that kind of high energy, high tempo, super confident scorer that isn't always the most efficient player on the floor, but can be an energy changer and bring a boost. So I watched a little bit of his tape. I mean, he's going to be tough. He's going to be hard nosed. I think he's a guy that TCU fans will be really excited to buy into. He's not going to be one of those players that takes you, into the tournament by himself, but he can be a really, really nice piece on a team where we're starting to see some of these guys commit to TCU that are already on the roster and get confirmation that guys like Micah Robinson and David Punch and Malik Diallo are going to be back. And if that ends up indeed being the case, now you're looking at a core that's really, really exciting. They're going to be young again, but they're young and experienced now as opposed to young and inexperienced. And when you add in Bug Edwards to that mix, I think we're still. Have we gotten anything on Jace Posey? Do we have any one way or the other commitment?
Yeah, he's coming back as well.
Okay.
So here's the thing about that too, right? Like guys can say that they're coming back,
and then change,
and you can commit and do the social media posts and all this other stuff. The portal's open until April 22nd.
Yeah.
And, I got word that Ernest was planning on coming back, and then all of a sudden, he's going to Miami. He's signed with Miami now. And so just because a kid says, I'm coming back, you still got to cross your fingers and do everything you can to continue to recruit the kid until the portal closes again, because otherwise you won't have him.
Yeah, but, at this point, based on what we know on this moment, there's reason to say, okay, this is a team that can get back to the tournament. Obviously, things consistently can change. They can change eternally, it feels like at this point. And a lot can be different between, once rev share there's a lot of things that can change what things look like for these kids. But I based on how this team played at times down the stretch, based on what we seen them do at their best, I think there's reason to be excited. They have some holes to fill still on the roster. There's some pieces to get, but you have to feel good that you have your point guard. You have a nice combo guard addition. You're bringing in a stud freshman and a nice JUCO piece. There's stuff to build around, but I have a feeling we're still going to be seeing some of the inconsistency and immaturity that we saw at times this year at the early part of next year. You just hope that by the time January, February rolls around, that they're playing like a complete unit.
Absolutely. And like you said, having a core come back that has played together for a year will be huge for something like that. Because last year at this time, TCU was looking at just one guy who had ever played minutes coming back to play. And we saw the amount of time that it took for guys to get comfortable around each other. And even then, it never really looked like the coaching staff wanted it to look.
Yeah.
Part of that was the Frankie Collins injury. Part of that was some other things as well. But hey, I'll tell you this, there's a particular school down the road, Melissa, that's staring that same reality in the face now that Rob Wright is in the portal down in Waco. I think they have 4 guys on the roster currently, and that includes 2 guys that have committed out of the portal already. So, things can get dark in a hurry in this era. And I think what we've seen from TCU as far as keeping this young core together, should they actually make that happen, and I'm confident that they will at this point, that in and of itself is an accomplishment and an achievement. And it's something that I've been talking with Horned Frog Blitz about, folks over there, because they're really, hey, who's TCU going after in the portal? We need a big, we need wings, we need guards. And yes, but rightfully so, the coaching staff's priority the second the season ended was keeping these young guys on campus. Yeah. Because the last thing you want to do is have to go to the portal for 9 guys when you could only go to the portal for 4. And I think that the staff has done a really good job of selling the vision to these players for the next season, and selling these guys on the guys they're bringing in the portal, right? Selling Micah Robinson and David Punch on the fact that they're going to have a point guard who's going to be looking for them, right? Selling Malik Diallo on a guy who's going to give him lobs down low. Selling them on a guy like Jaden Pierre, who's going to be able to space the floor a little bit more than TCU was able to space the floor this year. Selling guys on whoever comes next out of the portal. And so that is a huge part of recruitment now. And Sonny Dykes talks about this from a football perspective all the time, recruiting your own roster. and making sure that those guys stick around and are happy and are well taken care of. So,
Well,
yeah.
anybody that's in sales knows it's a lot cheaper to retain than it is to recruit, right? New clients. And if you look at the roster, you've got your rotation. If the guys that we expect to stay are still here in the fall, you have your rotation built out. So, and we've seen like TCU will be competitive in the NIL space, but they're not going to throw dumb money after guys, right? Just to sign people. And so at this point, you're looking for good fits, good pieces, good chemistry, guys that can step up in a pinch. You've still got, RJ Jones and Ashton, just blanked on his last name,
Simmons.
Okay, I thought it was Simmons, and I second guessed myself. You've got those guys coming back too that redshirted this fall. So there is a pretty complete team. Yeah, you'd like to add a piece or two, but you also want to see these young guys develop. You've kept them here. You want to give them opportunities to play. And if you keep going after every big name in the portal, something's gonna suffer, right? And it's gonna be the playing time of these guys that you've invested in and have worked to develop for the last year or two.
Exactly right. So I think both sides of the basketball program at TCU, men and women's, are in pretty good shape right now.
Yeah.
I think as far as what the future holds, I think they're hanging in there. So looking forward to the next couple of weeks. I think we'll have a lot more clarity this time in May, as far as what the roster is going to look like, who's going to be on campus, and what the real kind of prospects are for the 25-26 season.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, Melissa, should we move on to baseball? Because TCU had a 4-0 week this past week. They got a midweek win. Look, what did I say before the season started? It's a young baseball team that's going to take time to adjust, but this team will go as far as the freshmen take them.
And they are taking them far.
Moonshots from Sawyer Strohsnyder. Moonshots from Noah Franco. Incredible pitching from some of these freshman arms. I've been really pleased with the in-season development and progress that a lot of these young players have made. 79%, Melissa. 79% of TCU's home runs hit this year are by players that are sophomores or younger.
Jeez.
And
it
by
feels
the
like
way,
90% of those 70% are three guys.
Yeah, Brunson and Franco and Stroh. And TCU, with its home runs, its 5 home run game to sweep BYU on Friday night, now has 44 home runs on the season. Fun fact, do you know how many TCU had all of last year?
I feel like it was either 42 or 44 because I tweeted about this. I cannot remember the exact number.
It was 40.
Oh, it was 40. Okay. It was in the 40s.
So TCU, 33 games into this season, has hit more home runs than they did all of last year. Pretty nice.
It is really fun to go to basically what amounted to 2/3 of a doubleheader on last Friday and see like 6 home runs get hit.
Just as many as you could possibly ask for. They played 29 innings of baseball in roughly 24 hours and came away with 3 baseball wins. That's not bad.
And hit 11 total home runs or something.
Their
9?
first 11 because they were at 9.
Yeah.
At one point, they had hit more home runs in the series than they had used pitchers. That didn't bear out, I think, because of Game 3. But like you say, Game 3, we talk about the home runs, but what I'm loving about this young team is they're just like naive enough to not know any better. They went down 6 runs against BYU twice when they already had the series win secured, and both times they fought back to win it in extra innings. And they hit clutch. They had clutch hits. They had super clutch home runs. You see the same, handful of guys delivering time after time, but it also feels like the rest of the lineup really stepped up over the course of that 3-game series at different times. They are gritty. They are tough. They don't anticipate that there isn't a score they can't come back from, and they've proven time and time again that they can. So why would you not believe in your ability to change the game with a swing of the bat? And like that to me is the thing that's so fun about this team. They're young. They've been inconsistent. Like those freshman arms are like, we know that there's going to be a rough patch in late April, early May with a freshman-led team because it seems like it always happens. But I have so much confidence in them being able to push through those rough patches because we've seen them do it
time and time again. Like there were people ready to throw in the towel on, Sawyer Strohsnyder after the opening weekend, right?
We remember who y'all were.
Yeah, we know who you are. And there were people ready to throw in the towel on this team after the way the Globe Life series, ended. But when you look at what they're doing now they haven't played too many elite teams, and we're going to get into all of that in a minute when I open the floor for you to rant. But they just keep finding ways to win. And like you said, the freshman arms have been super, super impressive. The bats have been great. And it's just, I can't remember the last time that I saw a TCU baseball team that had 3 or more players that you knew could completely swing a game with a single swing of the bat. And that's really fun to have.
It is. Speaking of fun, Chase Brunson's 2 home runs on Friday came on his mother's birthday. His mom
cute.
asked him for a home run, and he delivered a pair of home runs. So happy belated birthday to Chase Brunson's mom. Incredible family, very fun folks over there in the Brunson household. And Chase has been absolutely swinging a hot bat all season long, which is really fun to see. Sawyer Strohsnyder came back from a little bit of a banged up shoulder that he suffered in Houston. Sliding into home plate in the 5th inning on Saturday, banged up his shoulder a little bit. That's why he didn't play on Sunday of that series. That's why he didn't play on Tuesday in TCU's walk-off win over UTSA. But looked the part.
He looked fine.
Looked fine this weekend against BYU. I think he's okay. He did DH. He didn't play in right field. I'm wondering if maybe he gets a day off against UTA as well. Just a 9-19 baseball team in Arlington, let him rest and get him ready.
I'm going to that game, so I'd rather he play, but that's just me being selfish.
Well,
I'll be there this weekend too. It's fine.
If him not playing on Tuesday means he plays all 3 games against Kansas, then I think that's pretty big because Kansas is a big weekend coming up here. This weekend in Fort Worth. Look, I think that when you look at this BYU series, the way TCU jumped on BYU the first 2 games, I don't know that TCU fans who had not been paying attention to BYU recognized fully how potent that lineup is for the Cougars, because it really is good. I mean, they averaged close to 10 runs a game, and TCU held them to 6 runs in the first game and had a no-hitter through 7 innings in the second game of that doubleheader before the bats finally warmed up for BYU on Friday a little bit. But that's a good hitting BYU team that TCU came away with the sweep of, and the pitching isn't necessarily there for BYU, but it wasn't there for TCU on Friday either. One of your most consistent arms in Braden Sloan had a rough outing. Probably the one time he's really gotten banged up this year. Cademan Parker struggled in his second outing back from an injury. And so you're looking at that and you're thinking, oh my gosh, we only got 3 1/3 innings out of our 2 main guys today. What's going to happen? And then the bats catch up again. And then you have a true freshman arm in Caden Smith come in the 9th, pitch through the 11th inning, 3 innings, no-hit baseball with 4 strikeouts. Just absolutely clutch. Had not been stretched out really over multiple innings yet this season. And just comes up and puts it on the table and says, now this is what I can offer you late in games. Huge moment from the freshman. Really pumped to see that kind of development from him. Loved what I saw from Cade Udy earlier in the series.
Big Cade Udy fan over here.
Loving what I'm seeing from Mason Brassfield the last couple of outings as well. These are guys that are going to be big pieces of TCU's pitching staff for the next couple of years. But just because that's the case doesn't mean that they're not going to be impact players right now. And that's what TCU needs to continue to see from guys like them if they want to get where they want to go this season. So shout out to those guys. Shout out to the Bats. I thought it was an incredible baseball weekend for TCU. At the end of the day, you can look back on this week and say TCU was 4-0, and that's as good as you can do.
Yeah.
Right? Yes, there were things that they need to improve on. Yes, there were opportunities for them to lose baseball games, but they didn't. They showed a lot of resilience. They showed a lot of grit, like you said. And shout out to Cole Kramer for 2 walk-offs in 4 games. He's going to run out of jerseys with as often as his teammates are ripping them off his body at this point. Last thing I want to talk about before we pivot a little bit. I don't know if you were still there on Friday. I think you had already left to go take care of I don't know if you were still there on Friday night for the walk-off.
No, I missed it. Dang dogs,
but
Bauer.
Shout out
Bauer.
Bauer.
My podcast and needs
Love
to
it.
eat twice a day.
Who does that? 2 on, 1 out. Sawyer Stroh-Snyder coming up. Stroh-Snyder is 1 for 6 on the day, and BYU still intentionally walks him.
Yeah, I was watching. I was watching on TV, and I loved that.
I want to know if the camera caught this on TV, because in the stadium, Cole Kramer was the first person to realize that BYU was intentionally walking Stroh-Snyder. So Stroh-Snyder's still in the left-handed batter's box, as Cole Kramer's stepping into the right-handed batter's box and just pointing for him to go to first base. And Stroh-Snyder's looking around like, what do you mean? And then the umpire says, yes, they're intentionally walking you, and sends him down to first base. I've never seen somebody more ready to hit in a clutch situation like that. And he took the first pitch. Yeah. And I know that this is a family-friendly podcast, Melissa, but he shit on that baseball. He shit on that baseball. He hit that ball so hard. And that, even if it wasn't like a clutch walk-off moment, that's a bases-clearing triple probably.
Yeah.
I mean, he hit that ball hard in the gap to right center, a place he's hit the ball so frequently this year. I don't know why teams don't shade him, to right field. Kansas don't do it. But yeah, Cole Kramer with a huge walk-off against BYU to clinch the sweep. TCU is now 25-8 on the season. They are 8-4 in Big 12 play, and we're a little over halfway through the season, Melissa.
Yeah.
So it's looking like those preseason projections that you asked me about. Over under 36.5 wins, over under 18 losses. Looks like we're on track for me to be right.
We're pretty good.
Now, big weekend coming up.
Yeah.
Kansas is 4th in the country in home runs hit. They have 73. They have 73 home runs already this season. They lead. The second place in the Big 12 has 53. TCU's in 4th with 44. Right. So Kansas rakes. They are very good. The front end of their rotation is very good with Dominic Vogel. This is going to be an incredible test for TCU. And at the same time, it's going to be a really big test for Kansas to try and go on the road and win a weekend series. Kansas currently is the leader in the Big 12 standings. TCU is a game behind them in a 3-way tie. This is a big, important weekend for TCU baseball when it comes to winning the regular season in the Big 12. So TCU fans, get to Lupton. Get to Lupton this weekend. It is a huge baseball series. I know you look at the name and you say, well, it's Kansas. Yeah, it's Kansas, and they're really good now. Get to Lupton Stadium.
Yeah, and you don't play West Virginia, who is in there, and you played Arizona, and it did not go very well. So these are important games for the Horned Frogs to get. The weather's supposed to be perfect. It looks like it's going to be a lovely weekend in Fort Worth.
Yep.
I think that's something that we've noticed is the fans have been a little slow trickle to get out to Lupton. And this team you're going to want to say you were there for the beginning of Stroh-Snyder and Franco, and for the ascension of Chase Brunson, and if Haley Van Lith can do the swimsuit issue for Sports Illustrated, why can't we get Cole Kramer
do the ESPN body issue?
Yeah, I've seen this man shirtless more often than I've seen him in a jersey, I feel like. So, as you pointed out, so why not do the body issue, Cole?
Well, we'll set up a pod interview with him, because I invited him on the show the other day when he did postgame, and he said he was down. So you can ask him that question.
I will
yourself. Hey,
I have no shame.
ESPN body issue calls.
Yeah, he's older, so I don't feel like I'm comfortable asking that of a freshman.
True.
That would be weird. But he's
a man who's legal drinking age, so there's at least that.
They call him Unk, right?
He is Unk. He is Unk for a reason. Another fun fact about Cole Kramer, he did mention that the last time he was a part of a walk-off prior to the 2 this week were when he was still a member of Washington State last year, and TCU was walking him off in a midweek game here in Lupton. So he is one of the few folks on the roster that has experienced both ends of Lupton magic. Pretty interesting.
We do need to mention one more thing about this weekend. We talked about how hot Sawyer Stroh-Snyder was at the plate and all the home runs that he hit. My favorite moment was the FU bunt that he executed for a base hit.
Yeah, that'll get you hit.
Yeah.
So he's a little lucky that that didn't come back to bite him.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Just a moment of, I can do whatever I want right now, and I will get away with it.
Yeah, and you know what? He did.
Love it.
Love it.
What's next?
Well, you have a rant.
Not a big one, just a tiny rant.
You're editing yourself, and I respect that.
Listen, so I was texting with our good friend Martin Guerrero, member of Lepton Drinking Club, earlier today because he had an interesting tweet. He was kind of diving into the D1 baseball rankings for this week and looking at how those rankings compared to some other metrics that are out there, specifically RPI. When it comes to tournament time, the selection committee for college baseball leans pretty heavily on RPI for its bubble teams, for determining seeding, and kind of when you're in doubt about which team should be here versus like team B or team C, RPI is a metric that is leaned on pretty heavily at times. And so he was interested in seeing where the teams in D1 baseball's top 25, which is kind of the authority ranking in college baseball, where those teams stack up compared to their RPI ranking. And he noticed some pretty interesting discrepancies that he texted me, and I'm going to read them now. 9 of the top 15 teams in RPI are from the SEC. All of those 9 teams rank in the top 17 in D1 baseball's ranking, so there's a lot of consistency there. And the consistency goes even further. On average, those 9 teams are less than 1 off their RPI ranking versus their D1 ranking. So, for instance, Arkansas, number 1 in RPI, number 1 in D1 baseball, right? So stuff like that. Now let's go look at some other conferences. The ACC has 2 top 15 RPI teams on average. They're 5 spots lower than their D1, lower in the D1 ranking than in their RPI. So not as close 1-for-1 RPI and D1 rankings when it comes to ACC baseball teams. It gets even worse when you start to talk about Big 12. Big 12 has 2 of the 15 teams in the top 15 of the RPI as well, Kansas and Arizona. Kansas and Arizona are on average 10 spots lower than their RPI rank. So it gets even worse. Coastal Carolina, the only Sun Belt team in the top 25, also 10 spots lower than its RPI number as well. There are 5 teams in D1 baseball's top 15 that don't rank in the top 15 in RPI. They are Florida State, who is ranked 9th by D1 but is 24th in RPI. UCLA, who is 10th in D1 but 17th in RPI. UC Irvine, 13th in D1, 26th in RPI. Louisville, which is 14th in D1, 32nd in RPI. And the most egregious offender, Oregon, who is 15th in D1 baseball's ranking with a RPI of 71. And so I say this not to say that D1 baseball's rankings are bad or illegitimate or whatever it is. I say this because it's, at least on this smaller sample size, there's a pretty clear conference bias happening when it comes to the SEC versus the ACC versus the Big 12. The Big 12 is very clearly, far and away, the number 3 conference when it comes to RPI this season. 11 of the 14 teams in the league are in the top 100 in RPI. The Big 10 has, I think, 9 in its 18-team league, and far fewer are in the top 50 than the Big 12. So the Big 12 is a far superior baseball conference to the Big 10. It's almost on par. The ACC is like a step ahead. SEC is probably 2 steps ahead, 2.5 steps ahead at this point. But the reason that it's interesting, and the reason that I bring it up on the show, is when it comes to national perception of leagues, especially in college baseball, D1 baseball is the authority. And so if D1 baseball is telling you that the Big 12 is worse than it actually is, a lot of people are going to believe that the Big 12 is worse than it actually is. And when a lot of people believe that the Big 12 is worse than it actually is, the likelihood of some of those folks being selection committee members is not 0. And so then you have folks in the room who are looking at D1 baseball's rankings versus, or reading D1 content and incorporating that into their just general knowledge of the sport and of the landscape in any given year. And now all of a sudden, the Big 12 maybe doesn't get the same benefit as the SEC does when you're talking about bubble teams, or the Big 12 gets less consideration than the ACC or the Big 10 when it comes to bubble teams. And that's how we see things like West Virginia get left out, TCU get left out last year, right? And so I think it's a single week rankings in the middle of the season, and it has really truly no bearing. But I think the ranking is an indicator of something larger at play that does have bearing and does have influence on the way that we perceive the college baseball landscape. And I think it's really important for people like Martin to call it out when they see it, because you can hold people accountable and say, hey, why is there this discrepancy? And at least try to get an answer and some clarity. Because when we start to allow a small circle of voices be the authority on a sport, biases are inherently going to start coming out. And that's not anybody's fault. That's just human nature. But the reality is also that there's a lot of really, really good baseball being played in the Big 12 right now. You've got blue bloods like Arizona. You've got legendary tradition programs like Arizona State. And you've got TCU, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech. Baylor is up and coming. Kansas is really hot right now. Kansas State is playing really good baseball right now as well. All of those teams could theoretically make the tournament this year. Maybe not Texas Tech. They're having a down year.
Yeah, they're struggling.
But that's 6 or 7. That's 7 teams, right? Arizona, Arizona State, Baylor, TCU, Kansas State, Oklahoma State. 7 that are having NCAA tournament-worthy teams or seasons so far. Should be in the field as of right now. And you would never know it because of the lack of mainstream coverage. Now, there are groups, right? College Baseball Central does a really good job of covering the Big 12. Other groups do a good job of covering the Big 12 as well. But as far as like actual national media, Big 12 is not getting nearly the coverage, and in the rankings it's not getting nearly the respect that I think it's commanding at this point, and that's problematic. So that's why I bring it up.
Well, and I think it's so much more evident with baseball because it's a lot harder to follow the sport because of the sheer volume of games that are being played, and
Sure.
when you don't have people that are dedicated to covering that conference, and you know, we were talking about it earlier today, and it hurts the Big 12 unfairly that Tech is having such a down year and that Oklahoma State kind of got off that slow start. But we see the same thing in football, right? Like
Yeah.
it was once Texas and Oklahoma. It didn't matter if Texas was good. People assumed the Big 12 was better than it was because Texas was in it, right? Like, which is completely garbage, but like anything, sports mirrors life in a lot of ways, and
Yep.
perception becomes reality. So, yeah, I mean, it's really incumbent upon Brett Yormark to figure out how to put the same energy into marketing baseball that they are football and basketball, and I don't know that will be a priority, which is unfortunate because the Big 12 has been an elite baseball conference for most of the last quarter century. And should still be considered an upper echelon baseball conference today. We've seen these teams time and time again make deep runs into the postseason, send players to the major leagues, and have really magical special seasons. And for them to be so, frankly, blatantly disrespected by the loudest voice in coverage for college baseball will absolutely impact these programs when it's selection time. And it's not just about making the tournament, but it's the difference between teams that get to host a regional or be a national seed versus teams that won't. And those things do come down to names and expectations and perception.
Yep, they do. They do. And that's why I think it's important to have coverage that is appropriate.
Yeah.
Anyways, it's not really a rant. It's just an observation based on a conversation I had. And I like Martin, and he's a smart guy. So
Yeah.
I thought it was worth bringing up.
Really, you could have summed this up. The TLDR is Kendall Rogers hates your team.
Yeah, I
And
mean, we knew that.
Yeah,
we've
been knowing that.
We knew that already. I just didn't know Runes hated our team so much,
Yeah.
and that one
Yeah.
hurts. That one stings.
Yeah.
Stings a little bit. But, I think that's probably going to end up doing it for this episode of Frogs Insider. We will be back soon with some spring football updates because spring football is up and running, and we've got a lot coming down the pipe as far as TCU football is concerned. TCU baseball will be taking on Kansas this weekend. We'll have all the news and notes from that series, plus hopefully 1 or 2 more portal commitments happen in the next week. Maybe Olivia Miles.
There's some smoke on social media as we're recording.
Maybe a big man.
Yeah.
On the men's side.
Could be some big things happening.
Big things are happening in Fort Worth, Texas. But until next time, we will talk to you later. Go Frogs.
Go Frogs.